Okay folks, I put out the feelers on the YouTube community tab and over on the DOGTIMES Discord through the Patreon, and I got a lot of good feedback and a lot of questions about how I use both my light meter and my color meter in real world scenarios. So obviously this is not a real world scenario, as you can see from the very shoddy BTS cam of the FX30 up there. I'm in very tight corners here. I kept it very basic for a reason, just for the sake of this tutorial and answering the questions. So let's get into it, shall we? Here's the first one. Shout out to Miggy. He's part of the DOGTIMES Discord. He said on here, you talked about it before, but a refresher on how you use it to determine how much ND to use. If you have something like this, now I use the Sekonic Speedmaster L858DU. Now a lot of diehard old school cinematographers, they don't prefer this one because it's touchscreen. It eats up the battery a little bit. I haven't had issues with this touchscreen. It's always very, very responsive for me, but I have little piano player fingers, okay? The nice thing about this one is it has a full cine mode. Now I think the more popular version, which is like a black and white, it's not this color LCD screen, I believe it has a cine mode as well, but what I'm unsure of that one, maybe someone that has that old one can leave a comment regarding it, but I don't think the older one has the option to add ND filters into the actual light meter, because I can tap this wrench here and I can go to set filter compensation. I tap that and then I can go in here and I can throw in CPL filters, I can throw in ND filters, and currently right now, if you're able to see right up here in the corner, you'll see some little squares and it says -4. That's letting you know that I have 4 stops of ND in this meter right now. You'll notice also I have it in cine mode here, okay, and 24 frames per second, 180 degree shutter, ISO 800. So I kept it very generic for the sake of this tutorial. So first things first, I'm gonna kill my key light and I'm gonna show how I figured out how much ND I wanna use for this window right here. Striking the Nova 600. So now I'm gonna pull the matte box. This is naturally where this space is sitting all on its own. Massive, massive window here, as you'll see from this BTS picture I took. These are just old school, kind of weird stylized deco blocks. Because of that, we'll never be able to actually see out of that window. But I've also got a row of shears in front of it. And the shears are helping, you know, just kind of spread it out. So there you can see that our green traffic light came on. So that means we are definitely clipping the green channel on our sensor. And we can tell from the EL zone that yes, we are hitting 5 and 6 stops over out of that window, as it is. You say, what is the lens? The lens is ripped wide open at a T2, and however, I am also using a Viltrox speed booster. You have to forgive me, this is a Leica R modded lens, so it's actually an f2. That means we're technically letting in a 1.4. The problem is obviously I don't wanna have my traffic light come on. I don't wanna be fully clipping out of that window. Let's pretend that was a window that we actually could see out of, and the director or the client or the producer is like, hey, it'd be great to see the people walking by. And yes, I agree too. It's always good to reach for depth, right? We want depth in the shot. Honestly, guys, without using a meter, I just do the old fashioned trick here. A lot of DPs operate like this. I'm walking over to the lens, and what I'm gonna do is grab the aperture and I'm gonna start stopping down until I'm no longer clipping out. And you're watching this in real time on the red. So there you go. And actually what we're sitting at to get this is a 5.6. Now we're saving the window. You can see we brought all that detail back. We're not actually losing the window anymore. There's detail there. We can tell that those are blocks and not just a crazy window. Again, if there was something going on out there, we could actually potentially see out there. Definitely cars driving by, trees blowing around, because nothing is clipping out, okay? And we're taking full advantage of the dynamic range of the Komodo. And that's what the EL zone is showing us, okay? The problem, as you can tell here, is that now I am severely under. I am sitting around 4 and 5 stops under. We rip it back open, obviously where we wanna be shooting at, okay? And mainly you say, why is he ripping it wide open with Speed Booster? And it's really just because the background is not interesting here. So that's what I do. Anytime I'm in a situation where the background is not interesting, I rip it wide open. So because I stopped down to a 5.6, and keep in mind, I'm using the speed booster, so that is a 4-stop difference. So that immediately informs me I need 4 stops of ND, or AKA a 1.2. All right, so now we're going to add that to the camera. So that is the easiest way to figure out how much neutral density filters you would need without using a light meter at all, okay? But the flip side to it is, if you do have one of these newer Sekonics, you can go in there and add in the amount of ND filtration that you would desire. And now you can just kind of walk around and see what you're getting. I pull the dome out because this resembles the human face. And right now I'm just gonna take a general reading directly to camera to see where we're sitting at with these settings with 4 stops of ND. It's showing us that we are a 0.7, okay? AKA, it's very close to an F1, by the way. You notice that's a 0.7 split, okay? And I know that because of the little number next down there, that little 7. 18 foot candles is what we got here. Now, I always get the discussion about this too, the question about this, why do you do foot candles instead of Lux? Because Lux is the North American version, right, of luminance. However, the reason why I rely on foot candles is because foot candles are always going to be a smaller number. Therefore, it's much easier and quicker for someone like me to do the math when I'm calculating the output of lamps, because the foot candle number will always be smaller. That's why I lean on foot candles and don't care about Lux, even though they are identical in terms of what they're telling you. Most of the questions are things I've already talked about in past tutorials. I will leave a playlist that I've curated specifically for this video to have a really nice full-on discussion about each of these topics, and I'll put that playlist down in the description below. I highly recommend you save that playlist. And while we're at it, just make sure that you're actually subscribed to the channel and make sure you hit that like button, because that really helps out smaller channels like me. And you may want to make sure that the notification bell is turned on for my particular channel, because smaller channels are not favored in the YouTube algorithm. Okay, let's jump back into this. So if I want to change this to Lux, you actually hit the menu button. The menu button opens up a whole world of features, okay? The menu button is this big circle down here. From there, I go to custom setting. And then when I'm in custom setting menu, then I'm going to scroll down to illuminance unit. And here we can change it from foot candles to Lux, okay? Now we know 18 foot candles is actually equivalent to 200 Lux. Let me show you what this looks like without the magic cloth and the net. So I'm gonna drop the net down, okay? And then I'm gonna lower this magic cloth. I'm gonna lower the barn door as well, okay? Which I'm calling it a barn door, it's really just a flag. Okay, so now you see we are insanely overlit here. This is with the Nova just blasting on my face. This is actually a prime example of why I don't like to light from the inside. One, it crowds the hell out of your subjects. But because of the limitations of this space, we can't be outdoors with a light stand. We don't have a permit to do that. There's a lot of reasons why most of the low budget projects and documentaries that I work on, we're not able to put a stand outside. A lot of the times, honestly, like when we're on a travel job, we're shooting on the 2nd or 3rd floor. We have no way to get a light out from the outside. 9 times out of 10, this is what I'm faced with. We have to light from the inside. It's always never, ever going to look as natural as if you were lighting from outdoors. And also, it's just so much comfortable for the talent, the subjects, everybody on camera, because the only stand you have indoors is the floppy or the ultra bounce, whatever you prefer. This is a lot of level in here. On those goalposts, nothing is still clipping. It's still retaining everything, because really, if you look at the L zone, I'm really only about 2 to 4 stops over, you know, on the face. I'm not clipping at all. Again, we're really seeing the reality of the dynamic range of this red Komodo OG that we're shooting on here. This isn't cool, this isn't sexy, there's nothing rad about this. Obviously, I still have my background light and my edge light on. I left those on. So that right there is just a little Astera bulb, okay? That's all that is. It's dimmed very low. You'll see it's not showing anything. It's not nearly as hot as anything. And then next to it is this Astera Helios tube. And it's just got a little A-crate grid on it, and it's just, you know, it's just providing the edge, and it's matched to the light bulb. So it appears when everything looked nice. We'll get back to that. I'm getting ahead of myself. But first thing is, let me show you why I brought in this flag to act as a barn door for our Nova. You can see I'm gonna A-B off and on. Look at that versus this, right? Just amazing. It's just a huge barn door. That's our 24x36 flag, okay? That's helping sell that the light is maybe coming from the window if the window is continuing off frame this way, right? You can already see that the flag also helped kind of shape it on my face alone, but also I have the floppy in here. Let me drop this floppy out. Now you can see what it looks like without the floppy. I am still getting some natural shape, but it's still not as nuanced, okay? Now what we need to do is soften this, obviously. So that's why I say bring in the 6-foot Wag Flag of magic cloth. Now keep in mind, the magic cloth is going to cut your light by 3.5 stops, roughly, okay? That's a lot of light loss, but we know the Nova 600 is a very powerful unit, so I'm gonna fly that up now. Okay, here we go. I can't see what's going on, but I'm just gonna fly this up, and you're being able to see it in real time, what it's doing. That's one reason why I love using the Wag Flags indoors, because it's not a frame. and you can still walk under it. You can get around it very easily. It's perfect for documentaries. I love Wag Flags. You know what else is awesome to take on travel jobs? Cord bag. So we're gonna take a quick pause from the tutorial and give a huge shout out and thank you to today's sponsor, and that is the #1 organizational tool for filmmakers. So this right here is my main travel AKS Pelican for when I go on jobs, and you'll notice I have all of my cord bags right in here. This one is exactly what it's for, batteries and cables. This one is my first aid kit. And then this one is, it says gaffer tape, but it just includes all things for gaffing. I absolutely love these cord bag products. They are very, very durable. As you can tell right here, they have this all weather sealed YKK zipper. I absolutely love these things. Inside here, they have a dual little pouch. We open that up, and there is a little tiny pocket in here to put an Apple AirTag. So if you're traveling with something and you want to always know where it is, you can hide an Apple AirTag in any of your cord bags. These are the smallest sizes. These come in 4 different sizes, and I'm kind of a big fan of the tinier ones because they just snug in here really nice. I can fit about 1 more in there for some camera accessories. And here is the cord bag Y-wrap. Let me show you how you use this bad boy. We put a lens right here in the middle, and we go 1, 2, 3. Then this webbing right here folds all the way up and over, and we just cinch this up right here. Little cord bag cinch guy, and we just tighten that up like that. And now we have our little lens in there, and my label is already on there. We could also use any of these. Bada boom, 24mm lens. And these are still available as well. These custom limited patches, these are so rad. So be sure you use the code DOGTIMES at checkout to save 15% off your entire order. And from my experience of traveling around a little bit with the docs and stuff that I work on, a lot of rental houses have Wag Flags available now. So if you know you're gonna be limited to indoors, go the Wag Flag route. You'll notice that my face is still 2 stops over, right? It's too harsh. It's nice and soft, but it's still too harsh. That's where the net comes in, okay? So I have this net right off frame. You can see me, look at that, right? It's only a 1-stop net, red net. I fly it up, okay? And then I'm going to get it as close as I can to my face. So it's just barely off camera there. And I know, again, you don't want to crowd your talent like this, but for the sake of the tutorial, this is how I'm rolling with it, okay? So there you'll see, now I'm back to normal. Now you might say, oh, Justin, you're still over. You have to remember one thing. The middle gray is not where you want your skin tones to be, right? And that's where the EL zone really comes in clutch, because if you notice on that chart there, the 1/2 stop to 1 stop over is for lighter skin tones. And the 1/2 stop and 1 stop under are for darker skin tones. That's, you know, that's the equivalent of like exposure value compensation in like a photography camera, right? You want to know, you want to make sure your skin tones are what you're exposing for, not middle gray, okay? Your meter is always showing you middle gray, right? It's not actually showing you what you actually need for whatever skin tones you're going for, right? So you have to take all that into consideration. That's where the EL zone is really coming in clutch. You can see that that window isn't even, it's barely touching the 75 line, okay? It's barely touching that line. We know we have plenty of latitude in that. But again, if we look over at the EL zone, window blocks back there is mainly just 3 stops over. That is more than enough to see the detail there. So this is where it sits. Let me show you this. This is with a power window in post. That shows you right there, when you're working on the job, don't get caught up in your head about, oh my God, I have to save that window. You're never gonna save it. You're never gonna save it. You don't have the crew, you don't have the time, you don't have the resources. Just know, at least if you're saving it on the camera sensor, because we know the 4 stops over, yeah, that seems like a lot, but in the reality is we know we're not losing any information. The goalposts and the traffic lights are showing us that. The waveform is showing us that. Nothing is actually being lost because of the dynamic range of the sensor. So we know that later on in post, we can retain those 4 stops back. The meter is always just showing you middle gray. That's not actually where you want to live. And this goes for something like a Sony camera or any photography camera. the spot meter is only showing you middle gray. It's not telling you where your skin tones lie. So that's why you see a lot of guys online saying, oh, my Sony performs better if I push it like 2/3 over. That's the 0.7 mark. That's what I do. And yes, that's why. Why? Because 2/3 stop over middle gray is where lighter skin tones are properly exposed, okay? That's the reality of it. If you're shooting darker skin tones on, say, your Sony and using the spot meter only, then you would go negative 0.7. Now you're 2/3 stop under, and that's where you would put darker skin tones for proper exposure. You know, this is why it's so important to know the lighting just as much as you are obsessed with your camera and your lenses. When you get up to the big leagues and you're shooting some big feature film, some big Hollywood film, your crew is going to expect you to know what the hell you're doing, even with the lighting. Now that doesn't mean you have to be a lighting guru, right? But you should have some idea of what these fixtures are capable of, what the modifiers are capable of. And when I say modifier, I'm talking about flags, nets, diffusion rags, all of this stuff. Because here's another prime example of this. Let's say that I didn't have the Nova 600 for this setup. Let's say I had something much smaller, like only the Nova 300, okay? And I say, I love Magic Cloth because that's what Patrick O'Sullivan tells me to use, Magic Cloth. And you come in here and you tell the crew, yeah, put the Nova up, it's nice and soft, and then we'll soften even more with the Magic Cloth. But you don't understand that the Magic Cloth is cutting 3.5 stops of light, right? And your little Nova 300 probably isn't going to be powerful enough to pump through that Magic Cloth and still give you proper exposure on your skin tones. So what your crew does, they set up the 6x6, or God forbid if it's bigger, they set up the Magic Cloth, and then you're sitting there and you're going, man, I'm not getting enough exposure. You're not, okay, and then your gaffer says, well, yeah, the diffusion is too heavy. Okay, swap them out. Now you are losing time. Now that's when producers and clients and directors are looking at you, the director of photography, who's supposed to be the captain of the crew, looking at you going, we're losing time because that guy is now swapping this diffusion rag. This is why it's so important for DPs to know about the lighting just as well as you know about your cameras. The net, you're losing another full stop, right? So now technically I'm losing 4.5 stops of light and the Nova 600 is still delivering. I'm still sitting at 1 stop, anywhere from 1/2 to 1 stop over on the key side, and that's where I want to be for proper exposure for my specific skin tone. Let me pull the curtain all the way because you're not even seeing it off frame. Now in the real world, you would, if you didn't have curtains, you would just bring in floppies. So there we go. Now we saved some of that spillage back there the best I could with what I'm working with in these scenarios. But what's nice about the ND is way quicker to lose than a whole big 8x8 or 6x6 of diffusion, right? Especially if you have internal NDs, it takes all but 1 second to flick that off. Or if you're really rolling in the documentary world, most of the documentaries that I know of, that's why they're shooting on FX6, FX9, because of the automatic electronic variable ND. It just walks in and adjusts it accordingly, right? But for the rest of us that don't have that luxury, you know, if you go for a heavier diffusion and they walk in the camera and they go, oh, it's much too dark, then you just remind them like, oh, you still have the, you know, well, how much ND do you have? And they go, oh yeah, let me drop some of that out. That literally happens all the time, right? So keep that in mind too. If you're always factoring in for ND on the meter, it's just better because it's so simple to just drop the ND. I know that was a really long-winded way. I think that we tackled a lot there, but to answer your question, Miggy, I don't really rely on the meters for ND. I do work with it, as you saw. I'm really relying on the scopes, watching the scopes as I'm cranking the iris to figure out what ND I want to be on. And then from there, then I plug it into the meter. Honestly, you could reverse engineer that, just throw in some random number. You just say, yeah, like 4 or 5 stops, and just start really heavy, and you light for that. Now you're lighting for something really heavy. And again, if it's too bright, you add ND. If it's too dark, you take away ND, right? That's just the reality of doing it. Always remember, it's way quicker to add or remove ND than it is to start messing with the lights.
Thank you.
So again, special thanks to CRDBAG for sponsoring the show. I love these products. I stand by these products. I believe in them. They do the job. They do the job well. Don't skimp on organization and keeping your stuff safe.